I'm Chloe Mann, and today I'm going to be doing an interview with Meghann Conter from the Dames. Hi, Meghann, how are you?
Hey, Chloe, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is a little bit more about like what the Dames is, what do members do? Um, yeah, just kind of what the idea behind it is.
You bet. So, the Dames is an international, online, and in person global incubator for women business owners growing their six, seven, and eight figure businesses to the next level, shattering the next glass ceiling, and also for women in director and higher positions in corporate America. So, what we do within the Dames is we help give our members the tools to collaborate with one another, to learn how to grow their businesses using various tools, including personal growth tools as well as professional growth, and providing them a space to really answer their questions, problem solve, celebrate their wins so that we can truly take over the world in terms of being business owners and change the paradigm of business. Our members vary in a lot of different industries. They come from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. They are all different ages, races, and they really come from a space of commonality, which is they have huge missions and they have big hearts. So these are women who are growing their six-figure business to the seven-figure mark or seven to eight, or they're growing into the C-suite. And really, they are on big missions so that they can change their local communities, industries, and the world at large.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So not only are you making a difference, but you're empowering other women to make a difference. It's no wonder you were awarded the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce as one of the 20 top 25 most powerful women in business. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was a huge honor.
Yeah, I'm sure. So before you started the Dames, you were known as the Mistress of Marketing and the Mistress of Social Media with your company, Meghann Contour LLC, and your career has always been in marketing and social media. How did you like become interested in marketing as a career?
Well, when I was in high school and previous to that, I really wanted to study marine biology. I also am a Colorado native. I'm an only child, and I really had to think hard about going out of state to go to school for marine biology, which I definitely would have had to do because I didn't want to study amoebas in Colorado rivers.
Right.
So my dad sat me down when I was preparing for college applications and said, what is it that you think you want to do? And I discussed with him what it would look like to be in marine biology, and we had a good conversation about it. We actually back then had these books that were huge, fat books that you would look through to look at all the different careers and what the jobs were paying at that time in those careers. So we looked at marine biology, and yikes, it was going to take me a really long time to be able to get to the point to do what I really wanted to do, which was study whales. And I decided, my dad advised me, is there anything else that you're really interested in? And I said, well, I took a marketing class in high school and I really like business because my dad was an inspiration to me. So I decided that at that moment, looking at what salaries could be, supposedly, after you graduate with a degree in marketing, and that's the direction that I chose. So that's the reason why I got into marketing. And I am one of those few people who out of college, stayed in the same field the whole time, and then out of college, got into marketing. My first 6 years out of school, though, were stepping stones at best. They were not the world's greatest jobs that I had. And it was really hard to keep motivated because it took a long time to actually get to doing marketing in a job. So when I lost my job in 2008 because of the housing market crisis and because of the recession, that was when I started my business, and I became the mistress of social media first, and then the mistress of marketing, and then I started the Dames.
Oh, awesome. So You talked a little bit about your college journey, and I want to ask more specifically, in your time at University of Colorado Boulder, you were at the Lead School of Business. What were your favorite courses that you took, or some tidbits or nuggets of information that you learned from your time there that you're still using today?
I can tell you what was not my favorite class, and that was accounting, finance, and statistics. Those were not my favorite classes. Nor was calculus. I still don't know why I had to take that. But I loved the marketing classes. And back then, because I'm kind of old, we were not, there was no entrepreneurial studies. So everything was, you're going to go and you're going to work to get into corporate America. So we did, I can't even remember what the marketing class was, but we did a deep study of whatever company we wanted. So I dove in deep into Annie's, the company that makes the mac and cheese. And my favorite thing that I did was bring in 3 different kinds of mac and cheese and have the whole class taste them. And then we got to, look at the marketing campaigns that I had designed for Annie's. So it was those experiential classes where I really got to be creative and bring those ideas forward. Those were the ones that I enjoyed the most.
Wow, that sounds like something I'd really enjoy as well.
Mhm.
So for even people like looking to college ahead for high schoolers, did you take any other courses? I know you mentioned the marketing course, or do any internships or any work with any kind of marketing companies or even like the marine biology companies since you said you had an interest in that?
I definitely didn't do anything with marine biology in terms of studies because it just was not available in my high school in Colorado. But I took any business class that I could, and there wasn't that much offered, honestly. It was a lot of, I took as many AP courses as I could. I'm a linguist, so I also majored in French in college, so I took a lot of AP French, I took a lot of AP English, history, those kinds of things, because I definitely excel in those areas. So I was trying to get as many college credits as I could going into school. No internships, but I always had jobs in the summertime, and then when I got into college, I'd work after school and on the weekends. And in the beginning, I started out in hotels, which definitely showed me that I did not want to work in hotels permanently, but I did enjoy the guest aspect, interacting with guests during that time.
That's really cool. So for any other women interested in a career in marketing, what advice would you give them?
I would say go, and if you're in high school or you're in college, if there is a way that you can meet a small business owner who's doing something that you're really interested in, see if there's an opportunity for you to get some kind of a summer internship doing their marketing, helping them with marketing. Because you're going to get a lot more hands-on exposure to what it looks like to market in a small business than you are in a large corporation. Anytime you do internships in large corporations, for the most part, you're not going to get a lot of responsibility, and you're certainly not going to get the creative responsibility. So if you're someone who is into creativity, definitely in the marketing space or in the social media space, go to a small business, and it'll give you a heck of a lot more exposure.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I can attest to that. Interning at a small business, being one of 3 people on the team versus a large corporation. Yeah, definitely a different experience. So I took a peek at your LinkedIn, and it looks like you just have a plethora of entrepreneurial experiences. What advice do you have for women who want to start a business in high school or college?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many online courses now that you can take to, get your MBA in small business. That's really not an MBA. And I would say take those classes. They're classes that are taught by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs on how to be a business owner and how to actually run a business that you'll never learn anywhere else. And yes, there are some universities that teach classes like that, or they have actual entrepreneurs that come in and teach those classes, but I really think that there is so much out there that you can just get your hands on, and you might as well learn as much as you can from real entrepreneurs before you go to school. And that's going to be a great way to understand that you're not just a tradesperson or a technician or someone who's good at marketing, or you're not just, if you're going to succeed, you can't just be good at marketing or good at operations or good at knitting or good at cake baking or good at selling water bottles. You have to be good at every aspect of the business. You have to understand what it looks like at all stages of growth, to have an accounting department, to have a finance department, to have HR, to have operations, marketing, etc. So you really have to get your hands on a lot of knowledge that you're going to get from experiencing. So from that standpoint, as well as getting an internship with a small business, I think you should be able to get a good idea for what it's like.
So within the Dames, you are not only the founder, but also the Chief Laugh Instigator. How did you come up with that title, Chief Laugh Instigator? I mean, your social media, like all your pictures, you're always smiling, but how does that laughter play into taking the Dames from a group you started to a full-scale global business?
Yes. So when I had my first business and it was in marketing the whole time, I always knew that my top value was fun, and I could not figure out how to integrate that into the business that I did. It was always like trying to make things fun, and like every now and then, it'd be like, okay, we could have a branding photo shoot and it'll be fun, and then we'll have this kind of meeting with the whole team and it'll be fun, but there really wasn't much that was truly fun about it. So I was always trying to find those opportunities and like shoehorn them in. So when I decided to create the Dames, I said, you know what? What is it that my target market needs? We're all women who are running businesses that take a lot of our time, that require us to be very serious most of the time, that require us to be on, and constantly the engine has to be going. So we don't need any more seriousness. That's what we don't need. We need to be able to get out of seriousness. So from the first event that we had, we've always had a reverse mullet approach to our events. And that is where we have a female comedian or improv troupe that comes in and performs to really get everybody to let their hair down, sort of, let the day's woes and stresses go away so that they could connect more authentically in the space of, an event, a networking event. And it worked. And we've kept doing it ever since our first event in 2015, and we'll keep doing it forever. And we even now have gotten to the point where it's so embedded and embodied in our culture that we have our annual conference, which is called the Funference. And at that conference, it's business growth, yes, it's personal growth, but it's also comedy, it's also improv, sketch comedy, it's things that we can do or that people do up on stage who are voluntarily wanting to do it. Nobody's pressured, but to really help us just relax and really truly connect in a very authentic way.
Just so really touching. I was wondering if you could share a success story or a very memorable moment that you've had with the Dames and how it's impacted another member's career or business, something like that, to really understand how you guys are truly like impacting other women.
Yes, I'll share a couple if that's okay.
Awesome. Yes, I'd love that.
So, so women have a hard time asking for things, and we aren't, we are taught, many of us, and thankfully I don't find it too much with people younger than myself, but people at my age and older, we see it all the time, that we were taught that it's inappropriate to ask for things. It shows you're weak, it shows you're needy, it shows who knows what else, all the narrative that we were kind of fed as we were growing up. So what do women need more than anything else? It's community. And that never has changed. It's been that way since the dawn of time, when women would sit in a red tent together, and women would come together, and they would be the hunter, or there would be the hunters and we would be the gatherers, and we would do everything together. We would raise each other's children. There's nothing, more true about women, that we are collaborative in nature and we love community. But a lot of times, because we are so afraid to ask, we don't ask for what we actually need. So one of our members came in, and she is just a beautiful woman who lives in Jamaica with her husband, and they were merging their businesses, and it was going to take a huge rebrand. And so, she came to me and asked me, what is it that I can do? When we were actually on one of our mastermind calls, and we all said, why don't you start asking different dames to give you some ideas, proofread some of the things that you're creating, ask questions of them because they're your ideal clients. And so she started asking, and she felt really uncomfortable at first, but then now she's at this point where they have merged their two companies and they're thriving, they're doing well, and she comes on the calls all the time and is just like, thank you so much for teaching me how to ask with clarity and how to build up that confidence, because everyone was so willing to help and I never thought that they would be. And that's one of the sort of intangible results. And on a tangible side, I'm thinking of one of our members who, when she joined the Dames, she had just grown her business to 6 figures, which is our minimum requirement to be in the Dames. And she said, I'm coming in and I am determined that I'm going to double my business this year, if not triple it. And she came in, she followed our Power Partner system. She learned how to collaborate. She really learned how to, she learned how to grow her business. She followed our trainings. She followed the trainings of a coach that she hired in the Dames. And she not only doubled, but she tripled her business that year and then doubled it again this past year. And that's all because she came into the Dames and she said, I'm going to be part of this incubator and I'm going to do what they tell me and I'm going to watch it happen. And she, I'll never forget when she called me and just was in tears. This was April of 2023. And she said, I just got my numbers for last year. And she was just bawling. She was like, this is how much I made. And that is what really makes a difference to me, is those intangible and tangible things that happen when these women come together and do the work that we've put together and really enjoy themselves in the process.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Wow, that's awesome that she set that really ambitious goal and met it. I know I'm also a person who's working on asking for things. So that's really an inspiring story for me to hear. Obviously, as founder of the Dames, you're definitely a leader in the community of the Dames. So I wanted to ask, how do you approach leadership, and if you change that for rooms where you're in, like, surrounded by men versus if you're a little bit more relaxed or just lead differently for the Dames or in a female dominated room?
It's a really great question. I lead the Dames with the principle of vulnerability always. Whether I am going through a really rough time, and whether that's personal or professional, I share it. Whether I'm going through a great time, I share it. And the reason I believe that's so important is because if we are constantly being modeled by our leaders that everything is fine, everything is great, it's all, peachy keen, everything is beautiful, I say unicorn farts and rainbows, then we feel like we're broken. We feel like there's something wrong with us when something goes wrong. And I don't believe that that's being a true leader. Honestly, it is rare that I find myself in rooms of men and women anymore. And that is partially not, it's not because I don't love men and I don't think that they're doing great things in the world. I just feel that women are at a pivotal point in time, especially intergenerationally, where many of my sisters and, my sisters who are older than me have a lot of damage that was done to them by other women, which kind of was created by some of the men, putting us against each other and creating competition for very few positions high up in companies. And, you know, we are still in a patriarchal society, and we are working toward making it equal, but there are growing pains in all of that. And so women need safe spaces to be able to talk and to be able to shift and change and to trust the world again. And that's what we really focus on in the Dames, is creating that safe container for expansion and totally transforming our lives. So I guess I could say that, you know, when I lead in a space of men, I typically am, you know, in the past, I would be talking to men and women when I was in marketing, and I would lean more on the numbers and what's in it for them, for the men. And I would lean more on the emotions and the feelings and the desired feelings when I was in a room with women. Now I kind of lead with both, because I understand that women love data too. So it's, yeah, that was a great question.
Mm. And in that answer, you kind of mentioned how your personal life has influenced your business. Can you talk about how you kind of balance a personal life and your responsibilities, within like your, running your business, the Dames?
This is probably not going to sound like most people's answers, but when I was in corporate America, I felt like a bifurcated person. I felt like I was cut down the middle, and I could bring my professional self to work, and I had to leave my personal self at home. And that caused me a lot of mental health challenges, a lot. And when I got into business for myself, I found that I felt for the first time like a full, whole person who could be myself personally and professionally the same. So, you know, I personally don't separate the two. I feel that anything I'm going to post on my personal social media is going to be fine and good for anyone professionally. Now, I do not post pictures of myself. You know, I'm actually sober for 7 years, so I don't drink, but I never put pictures up of myself drinking or, you know, anything like that. So I always kept my social media and most of my online presence in a way that it could be fine either way. But I personally don't believe that we should walk around as if we're two separate beings. And if you are in business for yourself, generally speaking, you're doing what you love. Otherwise, you wouldn't be crazy enough to be doing it and stay in your own business. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely not the typical answer. And when you said it was different than what most people would answer, I was trying to figure out what to expect, and it was not that, but I think that was a really wonderful way to put it, and I hope a lot of girls hear that, because I think that's very important to hear. So we've talked about authenticity and vulnerability, but do you have any other tips or any strategies that you use to foster meaningful connections within the Dames, or even with businesswomen that you talk to outside of the Dames?
I really believe that if you are a natural connector, that you know it. And so you should be using your connecting powers to help people get connected to what it is that they're looking for. If you are really natural at ideation, at coming up with ideas and brainstorming, that's something that you should be offering and helping other people to do. If you are someone who is a great cheerleader and you are, you know, you really love to get behind other people's causes and cheer them and lift them up so that they can get on bigger stages, do that. If you are someone who is, you know, just knows a lot of people and you can make connections for others to, you know, jobs or to clients or what have you, you should do that. So really it's about understanding what kind of a relationship builder you are and what you're good at and what you're not, and leaning into the things you're good at and focusing on those strengths. Another thing that's crucial to being able to build relationships that last a long time is to know yourself really well. So I personally have continue to dive into a lot of different systems. I'm pretty well versed in the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finder, human design, and I'm getting into gene keys. And what this does for me is not only do I understand myself, but I understand how I relate to others. And I understand the lens through which I look that has me looking at other people and seeing them in certain ways so that I can say, oh, am I looking at them with a clear lens? And how can I shift that perspective and understand them better? And the way that I can do that very easily is by understanding a lot of these different personality typing systems. And I feel like I can be a better collaborator and a better advocate and a better friend to people when I know who I am. So know thyself is one of my principles. And I believe that if everyone did that, the world would be a much happier place. We wouldn't at least have as many narcissists as we do.
Okay, so my next question is more about the Dames and more about your leadership and your strategies, but I want to know how you cultivate like a sense of belonging amongst members who may feel disconnected from really traditional business settings, but or even like they just feel a little bit out of place within the Dames.
Hmm. So this is a concept of belonging, and there have been many studies done on belonging, and it's fascinating. And they keep studying more and more because they find that people who feel alone have a really hard time, right? So it's our job as community builders and those who grow community to help create different ways for different personalities and different, really different personalities. I would say you can simplify it as much as saying introverts and extroverts, but it's not quite that simple. But really devising ways of making sure that everyone can be connected in a way that works for them and that feeds them and it helps them. So for instance, when we're planning Funference, it's a big event. We have 130 women that come to it this year, and it's a lot, right? It's big energy, but we also have smaller breakouts and we have smaller groups and we have ways for our members to connect with, on a more intimate level and smaller scale. And we really think through ways of planning all of our events that make it so that everyone and their different styles can become more and more and more comfortable with each other and build deeper relationships with each other.
So I have kind of one more question before kind of wrapping it up. But just for you personally, is there like a quote or a philosophy that you find yourself coming back to, or even that you live by in your personal or professional life?
I'm not big on quotes, but I will say philosophy. Um, I learned about, let's see, it was starting in about 2012. I learned the importance of getting in touch with my intuition. And I learned that it's really, we are taught as we're growing up that we think, right? Everything is about thinking about it, putting it up here in this part of our brain and, or in this part of our body and just racking it around. But we're cutting off this whole part of ourselves that is extraordinarily wise. And, you can talk about it scientifically. They're starting to look at the gut health and the gut brain and everything like that. But we have the heart, we have the gut, we have the head, we have all the different dantians, as Eastern medicine would call it. And I learned so much about tapping into my intuition and listening to what she says and following that guidance and not always just saying what's logical, because in thinking of things only logically, you're cutting off so much of your own awareness and so much of what I believe can lead you into opportunities that are way beyond what our mind could ever conceive. Our minds can only conceive what they can see and what they have seen and what they've heard, what they have connection to, right? What they can connect the dots to. And so if we're only thinking up here, we're limiting ourselves. So it's really about how do you get in touch with how your intuition communicates with you, and it's different for everyone. And how do you use that as a way to learn and go beyond the thinking mind?
You so much for this. A lot of the things that you talked about were things that I've been thinking about recently. Um, and my women in business club at my school just had a meeting, and this is like a lot of the things you talked about. I'm definitely going to take to that club as we get ready for the Women in Entrepreneurship Day. So thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you, Chloe.